This session will be recorded and uploaded to the CC4 website. Okay, today is the last session of Urban Agricultural Workshop in Biotrap. For today's resource person is Dr. Jess Fernandez, our former DDP of Biotrap and currently serve as DDP in Siamang Rekpol. Dr. Jess will give us a lecture about identifying and documentation best practices in urban agriculture. Okay, before we start, please make sure that you mute your microphone and please do not take any annotation in WebEx window because it may disturb the presentation. And the discussion session will be held after the presentation, so you may use your microphone to directly ask the question, or you can use chat box dialog to type your questions. That's it for the introduction. Without further ado, may we present Dr. Jess Fernandez.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kashi, for introducing me for this session. I would like to greet all our participants very good afternoon. I hope everybody is doing fine and are really excited to listen and interact with me and the rest of our team at Biotrap on the topic identifying and documenting best practices in school-based urban agriculture. I understand there are participants from the Philippines and also from Indonesia. We don't have any other participants from other Southeast Asian countries, but nevertheless, this is a good opportunity to exchange experiences on how you have been implementing your urban agriculture activities and how to document them, specifically the best practice that we would like to share with our students and also to neighboring schools around us. So let's begin with a presentation. I would like to request our friend from Biotrap to help me move on the slides. Next slide, please. Okay. So for this session, I would like to define what is the best practice and why it is important to identify and document those best practices that we are having in our urban agriculture activities. And I will also tell you about where can we find best practices in doing urban agriculture activities and what are the criteria for telling that our practice is already best practice and what are the components in the way that we will document our best practices. Next slide. So in terms of defining what is the best practice, these are some definitions I gathered from the web, and it says that a best practice is a technique or method that has been reliably proven through experience and or research to lead to the desired result. It means that you have been doing the same thing and it has been providing very good result because you have evidences that it has been a good practice based on what your objective is in doing the urban agriculture, because every time you do that, you achieve the desired result. Like for example, if you want your to have a good harvest, then maybe the best practice is like the kind of fertilizer or the cultivation practice that you adopt, so it will give you a good harvest. And it's also defined as knowledge or experience that works in a very specific situation and context. It means this is very important because in different schools we have different situations. So some of the schools would have very big area for practicing urban agriculture. Some would have very limited space. So whatever suits your condition, and if that practice also provides you the right result that you expect, then you can call that as a best practice. Sometimes some people don't like to call it as best practice, but only good practice. Yeah? So these are the definitions of what best practice is all about. So let's move on to the next topic. Next slide. So why is it important to document our best practice in our urban agriculture activities? We like to have this documented because we don't want to repeat the same mistakes that we have experienced in the past. So if we already know that this practice proves very well, then we keep on doing that best practice, so we won't be committing any more mistakes. And if we don't commit any mistakes, it means that we are efficiently working on our urban agriculture activities. And working efficiently would also mean that we can be very effective in coming up with the desired outputs that we have, like the harvest, no pests, and so on and so forth. And if we have a kind of best practice, then it will be very easy for learning people. When we teach the best practice to people, then they will see the result right away. Then they would not be creating the same mistakes again, because they are already adapting the best practice that we have documented and have proven to really work well with us. And also, if we already have all this documentation of our best practice, it will benefit more people in similar situations and contexts where we have in our school. So if another school has limited space for urban agriculture and you already have a best practice on limited space in practicing urban agriculture, then they will say, this is applicable to our situation. Or if you have a big area, then it means that they can also adapt your experience because it has been proven to be very effective in your similar context. Okay, so hopefully at this point you're already getting what is the best practice and what is the importance of identifying and documenting our best practices. If you have some questions, just jot it down. Later on we will discuss. You will be having an open forum for any questions or clarifications that you would like to have. But this time I would like to move on to the next topic. Next slide. So there are different areas where we can identify some best practices in our urban agriculture activities. And you can find this in these three areas, namely the technology level, second, the system level, and the third is the aspect level. Okay? So three areas where we can find best practices, or we can identify our best practices, namely technology, system, and the aspect level. Okay. When we talk about technology level, we are talking about best practice in terms of the methods that we use, in terms of the procedures that we follow, or the materials that we use, and the types of plants that we use. So this is more on the technology. So like if you use hydroponic, then it's about the method and the procedure and the materials. But if you plant directly in the soil, then it's another technique. It's a technology. So different technology has different practices, and you can now identify what is best in the different technology that you use. Like, is it best practice when you do organic hydroponic? Considering that when we practice hydroponic, we still use the AB mix, or you can get away with the AB mix and come up with your own formulation using organic materials. That could be a best practice. But when you say about materials used, for example, again in hydroponic, is it best practice to use the plastic pipes, or you can use bamboos and other natural resources that you can find in your school? That would be a best practice in terms of technology. In terms of plants, then it depends on where the plants can grow well. Whether, like for example, in some schools, there are some areas in some schools that do not receive sunlight. So when you don't have much sunlight coming into your area, then you should be choosing plants that could be shade tolerant, and they don't need to require full sunlight or only partial sunlight, and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is anything, the technique that you use is about technology level where you can always find a best practice that you have. When we talk about system, go back to the same. When we talk about system level, so there are 4 levels in the system, whether you practice urban agriculture in household level, or school-based, or community-based, or commercial-based. So because all of you are in the school, so we focus on the system that we use in the school. Because in a household, in a family, it might be a different practice that they have, considering the limited space. Even in community, maybe it's a bigger space, or for commercial purposes, because they have more technology and more space and more budget, so it's a different kind of system. But we look into our school system and see what available resources we have there. That's why whether we have limited resources, whether we have limited manpower because you or the teachers are very busy in some school work, then we create our own practice about the system. And then you will see whether, this is the best practice because we already adapt to the situation that we have in the school. Okay, that is the system level. And when we talk about aspect level in urban agriculture, so we talk about whether we produce crops and vegetables for economic purpose, environmental purpose, or health and social dimension. So, for example, some schools now, they produce vegetables and they also sell. So that's the economic aspect of it. So like, what is the best practice when we cultivate vegetables and also we sell them? We sell them direct selling, or they use online marketing, or they use combination of direct selling or online selling. It depends on how you decide on that. And then how do we put prices on the commodities that we produce, whether like, do we compete with other vegetable growers, or we do it for the purpose of like collecting back the investment, so we will have to continue our operation, and so we will just be not doing much profit of it, but just to sustain the system that we have developed. On the other hand, one aspect level is about environment. So when we do urban agriculture, we promote biodiversity conservation. We promote local vegetables. We promote organic farming. So this is all about environmental aspect. Whether we use a combination of organic and inorganic fertilizer, it's up to us. If it gives the best result, that could be a best practice. But if we say we would like to have organic and we would like to use available resources found around our area, that could be a best practice. And then when you say, we would like to plant vegetables that are already not so popular or common and very rare that we find in the market, so we can promote biodiversity conservation. That is environmental aspect. So you can see different ways of finding or identifying any best practice in terms of this aspect level. The other aspect is about when we do urban agriculture, do we do it for promoting health and also social development? When itself, for example, in the school, why do you plant this vegetable? Because we would like this for improving the nutrition and the health status of the students in our school, especially if you have school canteen and you use the harvest from your farm to be the food to be sold in the canteen, then it will be very healthy because if you practice organic farming, then we are sure that the vegetables are safe and healthy compared when you use chemical fertilizers and other pesticides. When we talk about social aspect of urban agriculture best practice, it's like if we will look into farming as an activity, extracurricular activity in the school that will promote interaction between and among the students and the teachers, so they will develop teamwork, they will develop a close relationship, they will have much more interaction. So that is the social aspect of urban agriculture. Or it will improve learning in the school because the students are more interested, the students are more motivated, they love working together. That is the social aspect of doing farming together in the school. So these are some of the three levels where you can identify where your best practice is all about. Once again, look into the technology level of your farming, look into the system level in the school that you practice urban agriculture, and at the same time, see whether your urban agriculture is addressing economic, environmental, and or social and health aspects in doing urban farming. Okay? So let's move on to the next level. So, for example, I would like to give this, although I have given some of them earlier on. So when we talk about best practice in economic aspects, so I said maybe we can use vegetable waste as compost, other than like chicken waste or animal dung, but we can decompose garden waste or kitchen waste, because in our garden, in our school, sometimes we trim some grasses, we trim the plants, we trim the trees. This can be decomposed, or like if your canteen cooks vegetables and the trimmings from the vegetables can be used and recycled as compost. And we also can use other natural resources that you can find in the school. And economic aspect also, like you don't need to buy your seeds every time. So once you have already the harvest, like tomatoes or eggplants or okra or any other vegetables that will produce the seed, you can collect the seeds and stock it in your school. So when you plant again, you already have the stock and you don't need to buy seeds from outside. Because sometimes the seeds may not be available in the store. But if you have already the stock in your school, then that would be a best practice of seed stocking. How do we minimize the available space in our school? Could be a best economic practice also. Like, do we use the rooftop of our school? Do we use the parking area in our school? Do we use small cans? The creativity is endless when we talk about maximizing available spaces in a school to be able to do urban agriculture. Especially also in some parts of Philippines and Indonesia, during the rainy season, we have a lot of rain. But during the dry season, we don't have much water. And if your school has a problem in water supply, then using rainwater could be best practice in terms of economic, because you save on water bills on your school when you water the plants, but you just have your rainwater, you collect them in one container, so when the dry season comes, or if there's no water supply, then you can use the rainwater that you collect from the gutter or whatever way that you will do it. Of course, economic aspect is like when you start practicing entrepreneurship as a result of your urban agriculture activities. Again, environmental aspects I have mentioned earlier on, like whether you practice organic farming, whether you know some technologies on how to properly manage the soil, the water, and the energy that you have in your school, and promoting biodiversity conservation. And now this is a very common practice of zero waste production. We are now talking about the green, recycling everything. Everything is not wasted. No waste production from planting until harvesting. You use everything, and nothing is gone to waste. For health and social aspects, I have given this example that if you create awareness about healthy food, if we know what kind of vegetables we need to plant, and we know what kind of nutritional gaps that exist in our school or even in your family, so we start planting those kinds of vegetables, and so on and so forth. And one important thing is farming as a recreational activities other than a learning activities. And then when you do some social urban agriculture activities, you may involve other communities outside. So it expands the relationship of your school to the communities around, and even with the local government around you, because once people know that you are doing urban agriculture, and then they can see that you can produce good harvest, and people become interested, they would like to visit your school, and so on and so forth, and learn from you. This is the same thing that happened to one of the partner schools of Biotrop when they adapt mushroom production in their school, and now they're producing a lot of mushrooms and producing satay mushroom and also mushroom bowls. And now a lot of schools are visiting them every day or every week because they have been very successful in the mushroom production in their school. Okay, so look into all these aspects. Later on, you will identify your best practice. Let's move on to the next topic. So now, how do we identify that what we are trying to do now can be called as a best practice? So there are 8 criteria to be able to call your practice right now as a best practice. These criteria include effectiveness, efficiency, relevance, ethical soundness, sustainability, replicability, community and partnership involvement, and commitment of concerned authorities in your school or outside your school. So I will discuss these 8 criteria one by one, okay? So let's start with effectiveness. Next slide. Okay. Effectiveness means that your practice must work and achieve results that can be measured. So when you say that your practice is effective because you can measure the result, like how many kilos that you have harvested because you practice this, okay? How much money you have saved because you adapt this practice. So these are results that can be measured. In relation to efficiency, it also means that you can produce results from your practice with very reasonable resources that you use, including the time. For example, most of the schools do not have budget to do urban agriculture. But how much, whatever budget you have, and then you are able to produce very good results, that is a good practice. How do you efficiently utilize the resources in your school could be a best practice. And especially so like teachers and students, they can only spend how many hours in the urban farming in your farm. So like, how do you maximize the time of the students and the teachers to spend in the farm so it can have a good result, whether like 1 hour or 2 hours, but still you can take care of the farm. That is best practice in efficiency. Okay? So when we talk about relevance, your practice is relevant if it addresses the priority needs of your stakeholders. What I'm saying is like, you have to identify why do you have your urban agriculture farm? What is the purpose of coming up with your urban agriculture activities? If you know the purpose, then it should address the purpose for doing urban agriculture. Do you do urban agriculture for extracurricular activity only? Or do you do urban agriculture to have profit and distribute to the students or for the school use? Do you do urban agriculture because you want to promote health and nutrition among the students and so on and so forth? So if you know that, then you have a very relevant best practice. Okay? Now, let's talk about ethical soundness. Ethical soundness means that your practice respects the current rules and ethics of stakeholders involved. For example, in Indonesia, are there regulations or like belief in Islam that you cannot do in urban agriculture? So we need to respect that. Or even like, what are the culture in Kalimantan, in Sumatra, in Sulawesi, in Java, and so on and so forth. The same thing in the Philippines. There are cultural differences in the different provinces where your school is located. So try to see whether our urban agriculture is not breaking any rules of ethics or values or customs and traditions in your respective schools. So we can say this is the best practice because it respects all customs and traditions and rules of ethics in your area. So that is what we call ethical soundness. Let's move on to the next 4 criteria. Next slide. So the next slide, the criteria is all about sustainability. This, I think you are all familiar because you keep on hearing this word, especially we have the Sustainable Development Goals. So sustainability means the practice, when you carry it out, must be implementable over a long period with the use of existing resources. So no matter the teacher and the students already graduate, but you still have the practice, and the next batch of students can still apply the practice, then it could be very sustainable. No matter whoever becomes the principal or the head teacher, but because you have established the best practice, then they can, the school principal, the new school principal, and the new batch of students can just follow what already being established in your school garden, and so that it becomes sustainable. They also trying to see whether like the practice is according to the available resources that you have. Like how many people are working on the farm, what kind of budget you have, what are the resources available. So you go back again to efficiency and effectiveness so it will become sustainable. And the next criteria, replicability, is because, like I said, the importance of documenting the best practice is because we would like to share this to other people outside of our school. So if our practice is the best practice, if only your practice can be replicable to another situation of similar in other schools, like if some schools will visit your school and they can learn about your practice, or we can adapt the same thing, and then if they adapt it and they become successful, then your practice is the best practice in terms of replicability criteria. Okay? Now, we move on to the criteria of partner and community involvement. Sometimes, urban agriculture, some schools just practice urban agriculture only for the school. They don't involve other people from outside. But now, because we believe that anything that we do should benefit a lot of people. And we believe that schools are agents of change for development. So if you practice involving the communities and other sectors around the area of your school, then that could be called a best practice. So if you establish collaboration with other stakeholders and you can sustain that, wow, this is a best practice because you are involving as much people as possible and you can benefit as much people as possible. Okay? And lastly, the eighth criteria is about commitment from the schools. If the school has a commitment to support the implementation of your urban agriculture activities, then that will be a best practice for other schools to follow. Oh, wow, our principal has really committed to support and give time to the teachers and the students to really practice urban agriculture, and they also give advice, or it becomes a policy that all students should be involved, not only certain group in the school to take care of the farm. That is a commitment. And if we have that as a best practice, then it will be something to be replicable. In fact, right now, it is now very popular to have school-based management practice. So everything emanate or come from the school. Agreement among the teachers, the principal, and the students. We will do this. So we will commit to do this. We will not be using plastics. We will only use organic material. So this is a commitment, and it will become a best practice in the end. Okay? So those are the 8 criteria for identifying best practice. Let's once again identify them. It's all about effectiveness, efficiency, ethical soundness, relevance, sustainability, replicability, partner and community involvement, and commitment from school authorities. So those are the 8 criteria. Let's move on with the next topic. So at this point, now that we know the criteria of identifying our best practices, the importance of documenting it, and where we can find best practice in our urban agriculture activities, how do we now write our best practice? So we now come to the 5 components in documenting our best practice. So when we write them, because we would like to write them, so people will be able to read and adapt them. So these are the components or the sections on writing our best practice. It includes, first of all, of course, we will have to have an introduction or background information about our project. And the introduction and background would answer justification for the practice that we call best practice and should address the following issues. What was the problem that your school needed to solve? That's why you call your practice as best practice. And then trying to know who are affected by this problem, so we need to solve them. And how did the problem impact on those who are affected? For example, the problem in our school is that maybe something like many students are not active in extracurricular activities. That would be an example of a problem. And then who were affected by this problem? Maybe there are some students who are not really active, or they are not in good health conditions, so they don't want to be involved in some activities. And then how did the problem impact on those that were affected? Yeah, if some students are not active in some school activities, then maybe they may not have a lot of friends, or they don't socialize very well, they don't have some groups where they belong, and so on and so forth. And then what were the objectives for implementing your best practice, your urban agriculture? So if you know that, and then you have your urban agriculture practice that will solve all these issues, then that is your background information. Because like I said, school farming can be a social activity. So for those students who are not active and they don't want to socialize, then the urban agriculture can be something to solve this problem in the school. And when the other students are now interested to join and they say, oh wow, urban agriculture is fun. Oh wow, I can interact with some of my schoolmates. Something like that. So this is how you frame your introduction and background information. Yeah? What is important is you have a very clear objective for that urban agriculture practice that you would like to advocate. Next, we will talk about, let's move on to the body of the report, and this is more on the implementation of the practice. So there are some questions that I would like you to ask yourself when you look into the implementation of your best practice, so you can write it down very well. So, one, what were the main activities that your school carried out? So what is the activity? What is the best practice that you carried out? How did you carry out these activities? When and where these activities were carried out, who were the key implementers and collaborators, and what were the resources required? Okay, I go back to my first example of like some students are not active in school. So what were the main activities that you carried out? Like I said, maybe you carried out urban agriculture activity, or for example, maybe composting. The activity is composting. How were the activities carried out? Maybe you say like, we introduced composting so the students can be involved. So we requested them to help collect all the leaves and cut the trimmings in the grasses and so on and so forth. Or every time they eat in the school, they are requested to separate the organic part of their meal another waste basket, so they will become component for the composting, something like that. So now you started to involve them. And then when and where the activity is carried out, like if you want to have composting, then you can have that still in the starting from the school canteen when they eat, or like when they do exercises in the school, when they started to trim the garden or help clean the school, because sometimes in the school there are a lot of trees and the leaves fall, and then there will be activities like, you just sweep all the leaves and then collect them into a container, and that will be part of the composting activities. And where is it? Maybe it's in the canteen or around the school. So you identify this when you implement the practice. And then who were the key implementers and collaborators? So of course, like either you involve all the levels, the grades in your school, or like maybe only the first grade or second grade, or the teachers or whoever, who are the main players, initiators in the practice. And what are the resources required? Like for the composting, you don't have much requirement, like you just have to identify a small place in the school where you can all put the natural, the dried leaves or the food waste or the garden waste all together in one area, so they will decompose naturally, or you can apply some decomposing materials. And so every now and then you will assign someone to turn around or look and monitor the compost heap, so you will see that. So this is how you describe the implementation of your practice, by asking all these questions. Okay? The third section in writing the best practice is like looking at what are the results. So now you have identified the problem, and now you have identified activities to solve the problem, like the composting. What are the results? So you ask yourself, what were the concrete results achieved with regards to the outputs and outcomes? So you go back to your objective. What is your objective? What kind of outputs you expect to produce? What kind of outcomes you would like to generate? So when we talk about outputs and outcomes, there are two different things. Like outputs are the things that you can really measure. Like when you do composting, like for example, you can now produce how many kilos of compost per bag, and then you can also look at how many students are involved and how much budget. These are results, like how less budget you use, so it becomes very efficient. When it comes to outcomes, so it's all about like how many of the students change their behavior when it comes to urban farming, because now they become more interested, now they become more active to socialize, now they would like to be involved in marketing, now they would like to be involved in biodiversity conservation. It depends on the objective that you have set for your urban agricultural activity. And these are some outputs and outcomes that you would like to see and measure as a result of your practice. You may also want to ask an assessment of the practice carried out. So when you assess that, so like for example, if you have the coordinator and you have the team, every now and then you monitor the activity in your urban agriculture practice, and now you can assess whether like, are we doing well or are we not doing well? Where are the problems? Are all the students still interested to participate or something like that? So now you have to measure the results. What are the results of your practice? So you can see whether it's really best practice according to the objectives that you have set. If your practice is accomplishing the objectives of your urban agriculture activity, then this can be said to be a good practice. And lastly, the last component will be trying to ask whether what lessons we learn from this practice that we have. So what worked really well and what facilitated this one. Like for example, going back to the compost, I said, like if you are able to produce compost, what would be the reason why you are successful? So you try to identify them as a lesson, and then why it became successful. What are the factors that contributed to the success of your practice? Like for example, maybe because all the students are involved and they cooperate and they work and they do the assignments accordingly, so it becomes very effective and becomes successful. On the other hand, we would also like to identify where are the aspects that did not work, why you failed, or like not 100%. And so you also have to identify why it did not work. What are the reasons? Maybe we lack the budget, or maybe we don't have much time to devote to our urban agriculture activity, or like the teacher does not guide us anymore, or we need some more facilities and so on and so forth. So try to see what are the reasons why you have some failure in your practice, so you would know where to develop and improve later on. So these are the four components. I think these are all the four components. Mansari, the last slide. This is the last slide, right? Harris? Okay. Oh, the last slide is really, the last component definitely coming out with conclusions and recommendations. I'm sorry about that. So once you already have your lessons learned, then it will be very important to come up with your conclusions and recommendations. So how do you come up with your conclusions and recommendations? There are some questions that you need to answer. And first, how have the results benefited the school? So like doing the compost activity, what benefits did it bring to your school, to your classmates, to the teachers, to the environment, to the community? So what benefits? And then why do you think that what you did can be considered as a best practice? In your activity, what did you do that you think this is a best practice? So you conclude, you can say, this is a best practice because da 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 da. And then when you have those kinds of conclusions, then you can now do your recommendations. So that all other people that would like to learn from you, they can just read your conclusions, your lessons learned, and your recommendation regarding your practice. So if you have that, then people would now be much ready to implement or adapt or copy your best practice, and that you can help people to solve the same problem that they have in their respective situations. So this is how you come up with your conclusions and recommendations when you write your best practice. Okay, I think this is the last slide, and if you want to read more on what is a best practice, most of what I have shared with you, I took it from these two references. One, a guide to identifying and documenting best practices in family planning programs, although the topic is about family planning, but the principles and concepts can be applied in any situation like in urban agriculture. And the other reference that I use is best practices in urban agriculture, a background report for the city or campus to support development of urban agriculture strategy. I think this is in UK or I think it is in Australia. So because this is urban agriculture is being advocated so widely in school in those countries. So if you want to read more, then you can search this reference material so you can learn more other than what I have discussed with you. So in a nutshell, so this is what my session is all about, how to identify and document your best practice in urban agriculture. And I would like to thank you for your attention. Now maybe it's time for us to have some discussions, questions and comments and sharings. And I would like to turn back the microphone to Mas Harith or Mas Rashid to moderate the discussion. Thank you very much. Mas Harith, Rashid, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much for the lecture, Dr. Dias Fernandez. And now we will start the discussion session. So if if any person want to ask question, please you can ask directly using your microphone, or you can just type it in the chat box there. Okay. Maybe from
No question?
chat. Okay, maybe from SMKPPN Lembang or SMKS itu Malang. If you have any question.
Saya ulang lagi kesediaan kalian.
Or from Saim, Zia, Alfa, and Amila. If you have any question, please.
What is the question?
Okay, afraid, yeah. Okay. Wait, let me see.
I cannot read the questions. Rashid, please read the question.
Wait, okay. From SMKPPN Lembang, if you have any question, and SMKN 1 Malang. SMKN 1 Malang, ada pertanyaan dari SMKPPN Lembang, ada pertanyaan. SAIM, Saim, Zia, Alfa, dan Amila.
Jadi diri gue ya?
So maybe Rashid, this topic is becoming very important now, especially so that we would like to document, and I think by 12 we still be planning to publish a book on best practices in school-based urban agriculture. So we would really like to gather the best practices from all the schools that have participated in this online training course. So Biotop can start thinking about publishing them, because this is something that we have planned before. For example, in Senior already published a book on best practice on school guidance or nutrition. I think Biotop will also want to come up with a book on really best practices on urban agriculture.
Okay, Pak. We will try to make them because it's already the fourth batch kan ya.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, maybe we can end the session. Mana ya?
Yeah, it's okay. Okay. If apa saja? Yeah, if there are no questions, maybe we should just close the end the session.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe apa you can apa? Maybe we just need closing remarks or conclusion from our research person.
Yeah. So, like I said, I really encourage the schools to start documenting their best practice so other people can also benefit from what you are doing in your school. Because some schools, they don't have the opportunity to attend training courses, but if they can see and read some materials about urban agriculture best practices, then it will be easier for them to implement the same thing. So I really encourage you to pay attention to documenting your best practices. Yeah, so for now, I think Mas Haris and Rashid later on will give the assignments for your respective groups. Yeah, Haris, you're the one to discuss that.
Okay.
So thank you very much for listening to my talk, and I hope you learned a lot from this, and I wish all the best for all of you to do better your school urban agricultural activities. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you again, Dr. Fernandez. And that's it for today's session of Urban Agriculture Online Workshop in C Creative Camp. We will in next week, in the next Thursday, we will have another session to discuss our final assignments with all the participants. So make sure all participants can make it, can join our session on the next Thursday in what 9 and the 7th and 9th of April in the same time. Okay. That's it for today. Thank you for your attention, and we will see you again next week. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon.